Hal mentioned I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming, and I feel very lucky to have grown up in that world. It was a wonderful fit for me. It's not for all kids, but it was for me. I just loved the outdoors. I loved physical life. I loved the physical work, and I loved animals. I especially loved the chance to be able to work with horses. But just because you're happy where you are doesn't mean that you don't sometimes hanker for greener pastures. And when my brother was 8 and I was 6, we decided to run away from home. And we presented this idea to my mother, and she thought it was a pretty good idea. So she fixed us sandwiches and poured us thermoses of milk and put these provisions with some fruit and candy bars into hobo handkerchiefs that we tied on sticks and put over our shoulders. And we took off down the road. Now, where we wanted to go was Chugwater. Chugwater was our nearest town. It was 26 miles away. But we were realists. We knew we couldn't make it in a day, and so our goal was to make it to the Vineyards, who lived at the far end of the ranch, 5 miles away, by nightfall. By noon, we'd made it about halfway. The halfway point was the railroad trestle over Chugwater Creek. And we were just about to scramble down the bank and have lunch when we saw a horse galloping towards us across the pasture. And now in the middle of summer, a horse coming across the plain really does kick up a trail of dust, and it's something grand to see. We recognized immediately that this was our father, so of course we stopped to wait. And he sat a fine figure on a horse. He was 6'4" in stocking feet and boots and hat, much taller. That day he rode a fine white gelding named Tequila. My father always used a spade bit, and he had the lightest hands. And we couldn't wait to tell him of our grand adventure. But we didn't have a chance. He pulled up and he said, "What in blazes are you kids doing out here? Just turn around, get yourselves home." And he spurred his horse, and he was gone. And so we started the long trudge home, and the day was suddenly hotter, and our boots hurt, and a blister burst on my heel. And I was thirsty, but the thought of milk was gagging. Blade asked if I wanted a sandwich, and I shook my head. "Me neither," he said. And we trudged along, and finally Blade said, he looked up and he said, "Oh, look, it's Mom." And I looked up, and here came the red station wagon. Only as it got closer, we realized it wasn't Mom. It was our father. And he pulled up beside us, and he opened the door, and he handed us out cold Cokes. And he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you had permission." Now, when my father would go in for lunch each day, he would take his dirty shirt off and take his boots off before he greeted my mother. And so now in the station wagon, he just had on his white T-shirt and a pair of slip-on tennis shoes. And in the fly-speckled light that streamed through the windshield, he looked bleached, inconsequential. But then I slid across beside him, and he put his arm around me. And this is my father. A kindly man, driving a station wagon, wearing a T-shirt and slip-on tennis shoes, offering Coca-Colas and apologies. And this, too, is my father, a horseman, in all his fineness and his fury, racing across an endless plain.